Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi ala ni'matul islami wa kafa biha ni'ma. All praise and gratitude be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on His blessing of Islam, which suffices as a blessing. So I'd like to welcome you on the 20th para. We have done half of this. Inshallah, we'll complete today. We were at Surah Al-Qasas last time and done up to ayat number 52, and we're going to start with ayat 53. Surah Al-Qasas, Qasas literally means a story. So this is a story that is there. We'll complete this and then we'll also move on to Surah Ankabut after this. So let's just start. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Wa iza yutla alayhim qalu amanna bihi innahu al-haqqu min rabbina inna kunna min qablihi muslimin. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. And when this Quran is recited to them, they say, we believe in it. It is the truth from your Lord, and we are the ones who have already surrendered to Him. Now this ayat, there's a reference to context over here. Ibn Hisham, who had written the earlier seerah of our Prophet ﷺ, the earliest seerah of our Prophet ﷺ, talks about this ayat and says, this ayat was revealed when a group of 20 Christians came to our Prophet ﷺ, while our Prophet was still in Makkah. So remember that this ayat, Surah Qasas, is about mid-year of our Prophet ﷺ in the Nabuwat. And they came and met the Prophet and they heard the Quran, and then they were also challenged by Abu Jahl, and they actually said to him, look, you be on your way and let us be on our way. Hence what Quran talks about them is that they heard the Quran, they accepted the words of this, that these are revelations from Allah, hence double reward for them, because it's much easier to be born Muslim and much more difficult to convert. Even after migration, we see some Muslims who had gone to Habsha, and then they also invited some Christians to hear this Quran, and they were also moved by the words of Quran. Such people will get their reward twice because they are patient and they repel evil with good and spend out of what we have given to them. And when they hear idle vain talk, they withdraw from it and say, our deeds are for us and your deeds are for you. Peace be upon you. We do not desire to be entangled with the ignorant people. So people who want to be knowledgeable, first and foremost thing is that they shouldn't be really wasting time to be involved in this useless thing which Quran talks about, translated over here, which is idle vain talk, which is lagh, that's the Arabic word being used over here, useless entertainment, if we were to use this word for over here. Now the nature of lagh is such that the more useless it is, the more attractive it seems to be. But the fact is that these useless things actually tire people down, and you see if people watch too many movies, they watch too much sports, or they indulge in too much sports, gambling, bar, it's a very, very exhausting experience. And one of the key drawback is that it takes one's attention from the truth, from the haqq, and that's the real problem for it, when people are involved with too much love. So Iman is there, it's not that Iman goes away, but Iman then actually begins to more feel like a dogma, like a set of rituals and all that, but the yaqeen, that gets missed out over here. You cannot give guidance to whom you love, but Allah gives guidance to whom He wills, and He best knows the one who are on the right path. So no matter how much we may like, no matter how much we may desire or want, we cannot give guidance to people. We can at best deliver the message to the best of our ability, but as to who gets guided and doesn't get guided, this is really not our call, this is not our choice. What is not in our treasure, we cannot give to anyone. Although we cannot guide people, but at least we need to be people who become the means through whom people get guided, right? And that's what we really need to pray to Allah, that through us may Allah give guidance to other people, because then the reward of that also accrues to us. They say, if we follow the guidance with you, we will be driven out of our land. Is it not that we have established them in a peaceful haram, which is a peaceful sanctuary, to which the fruits of everything are drawn as a provision from us, and most of them do not know. Now, what you see over here is that people have a certain concern over here. Idol worship that was prevalent at that time in Makkah was more like an economic need, because every tribe had its own idol in the Kaaba. And as a result of this, this city of Makkah was well protected. The routes to Kaaba were well protected. Trade was flourishing as various tribes, Arab and non-Arab tribe, would come for their pilgrimage over there. Now the fear was that if people begin to believe in one God, and that God is present everywhere, then the importance of Kaaba is going to be lost. And then people of Makkah thought that this is going to be a real economic calamity. And how many towns have we destroyed that gloated about their means of sustenance? Now those are their inhabitations, which were never inhabited after them except a few, and we alone were the inheritors. So people who indulge excessively in pride and joy, in recklessness and extravaganza and all these things. Now these are the disease of people who are very successful in life. You know, one of the real problem with success is that also it brings in this excessive pride and extravagance in lives of people. And also the fact is then people think we are so successful, there is no fear of accountability over here. Now similar obsession, the word actually Quran uses over here is batar. And that batar actually means excessive joy, excessive pride. And such similar obsessions you will also see in fame, in beauty, in wealth, in lineage, and all these things. There's a batar in it. Now what is the cure for batar? What is the cure for this pride? The cure for batar is, it's a disease of the heart, and the cure for this is hunger. So that's one of the cures. So fast once in a while. The next is remembering hereafter, keeping in view death, and that's also important. And last but not the least is that we must also know that whatever it is, whatever state that is we are in, this too is going to end soon. Now the unfortunate part of all this is that we often don't take the good qualities of successful people. Like I said, batar is one of the side effects of successful people. Successful people have also some good qualities, and that's the reason why they're successful. It may be their honesty, maybe their hard work, maybe their respect, maybe their freedom. But what people take away from success is not these good qualities, but the batar, and that's what people adopt: the pride, the arrogance, the obsession with success, the recklessness, the extravaganzas. These are the things people adopt, but they don't look at the other good qualities. And your Lord is not such as he would destroy the town unless he has sent down to their central place a messenger who recites to them our verses, and we did not destroy the town unless their people were wrongdoers. Now when there is batar, when there is pride in people, it becomes common, and that's commonly practiced in people. They become smug, they become full of themselves, they become conceited, they start to boast, they start to show off. So Allah warns them, and this is a warning that Allah is giving over there to such successful people. Allah warns them, guidance provided to them by different means. But if people then reject the guidance and reject the warning of Allah, then they face the punishment. Allah doesn't catch anyone unaware. He warns people and then catches them. First and foremost, they are warned not to flaunt and not to display. Moreover, whatever things you are given are an enjoyment of the worldly life and its adornment. And that which lies with Allah is much better and everlasting. So do you not then understand? So if Allah is given ni'mas to people, well, this is there. I mean, this is for your enjoyment, for beautification of life, all these ni'mas that are there. So use them for the purpose that they have been given, the wealth, the health, the wisdom. But it should also make people also feel more responsible. So instead of using all the khair that Allah has given to impress people, the people must use these ni'mas to make Allah razi and to use them to earn the hereafter. Is then the one to whom we have made a good promise, which he is going to meet like the one whom we have given the benefits of enjoying the worldly life? Then on the day of judgment, he will be among those who are brought forth. So two targets that people normally have, or two aims of life that people have are described over here. One is a person whose aim is dunya, and the other one whose aim is hereafter. So the well-being of the world is important, and no doubt it's very important, but it should not be at the cost of hereafter. One whose aim is only this world will have a severe hisab, a severe accountability on the day of Qiyamah. The day when he will call them and say, where are my partners you used to claim? Those against whom the word has come true will say, our Lord, these are the ones whom we led astray. We led them astray as we ourselves went astray. We negate before you our responsibility. It was not we whom they worship. So the company that we keep, the company people keep, helps to mold their aims and their aspirations and their priorities according to that. Whatever our company is, that's how our aims and aspirations, our priorities are going to be. Hence, on this day, people will blame the circle of their friends that it was they who had actually misled them. And it will be said, call your partners. So they will call them, but they will not respond to them, and they will see the punishment. Would that they had taken the right path. So the regret will only increase on that day. The day when he will call them and say, what response did you give to the messengers? Now this question, what response did you give to the messenger, has been asked on different occasions. This question is asked at the time of death. This question is also asked in the grave, and it's also asked in the day of resurrection. So here the reference is on the question being asked on the day of judgment. So all events will become too obscure for them on that day, and they will not be able to consult each other. So these self-created ideas of Nijat, every group of people, sometimes they create their own rules they assume that this will be the basis on which they're going to be judged on the day of judgment, on the day of Qiyamah. However, the basis of judgment is not what people think. People will be judged based on the rules that are narrated in Quran. As for the one who repents and becomes a believer and acts righteously, hopefully he will be among the successful. So instead of following our own ideas and our own opinion, people should just follow the commandment that Quran lays down and put them into practice. Your Lord creates what He wills and chooses. Choice is not theirs. Exalted is Allah above what they associate. Your Lord knows what their hearts conceal and what they reveal. And He is Allah, there is no God but He. Praise is only for Him in the beginning and at the end, and He alone has the right to judge, and to Him you shall be brought back. So this is Allah's decision, whom He chooses. This is His prerogative, whom He chooses. Whatever ni'mats that have been given to us, we should actually try and give that ni'mat its due right. That is that we use these ni'mats to earn paradise. Say, have you seen, if Allah were to make the night for you perpetual till the day of resurrection, which God other than Allah would bring you to light? Then do you not listen? So this is again a great rahmat of Allah, that the earth is spinning. That's the reason why we have this day and night. If it were to stop spinning, there would be a perpetual day in some portions of the earth, and there will be a perpetual night in some other portion. And man is so powerless, we cannot actually make the earth move. Say, tell me, if Allah were to impose the day over you, continuing forever up to the day of resurrection, which God other than Allah would bring you light in which you may have rest? Then do you not see? So we think that everything is automatically happening. Day and night is such a phenomenon that we have always observed it happening, and we believe this is almost automatic, it will always happen. That there is no conscious being which is actually making a day into a night and a night into a day. There are many planets around us, including our own moon, which actually, which do not spin on their axis, and as a result, they have a perpetual day and a perpetual night. And it is out of His mercy that He has made the day and the night for you, so that you may have rest in it, and so that you may search for His grace, and so that you may be grateful. So these are just a sum up of all the ni'mats of Allah. The night is the place of rest, and the day to earn, to search for the grace of Allah. And the day when He will call them and say, where are those whom you deem to be my associates? And we will draw out a witness from every community and will say, bring your proof. Then they will know that the truth is from Allah, and all that they used to forge shall vanish before them. So speaking of the day when mankind will face the Creator, every prophet will be called as a witness. The prophets will testify that he had conveyed the message, and then people will not be able to have any excuse. So does it really make any sense for people still to insist that yes, Allah, they are in front of Allah and they say, yes, your messenger was truthful, and we agree on that, but we did not accept his word. But now, although we didn't accept his word, but in return give us paradise, give us Jannah. It doesn't really sound very convincing if this is being asked to people. Indeed, Qarun was from the people of Musa. Then he rebelled against them, and we had given to him such treasures as their keys would weigh too heavy for a strong group of people. When his people said to him, "Do not exalt. Surely Allah does not love, or surely Allah does not like the exultant." So Qarun was from Bani Israel. He was actually related to Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, and was an economic and a financial wizard of Egypt at that time. He rose in wealth, he became rich, he became successful. And then finally he turned against Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, since his economic interests and financial interests were in jeopardy had he not sided with the Pharaoh. So he began to openly side with the Pharaoh against Hazrat Musa alayhi salam. There is also a riwayat in which it said that he paid a woman to slur the character of Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, and then earned a badwa from the Prophet. Now, due to his worldly success, he became proud and he became haughty, and some people close to him, as stated over here, advised him that Allah does not like those people who boast or who boast about themselves, since it is Allah who has given him riches. And seek the ultimate abode with what Allah has given to you, and do not neglect your share from this world, and do good as Allah did good to you, and do not seek to make mischief in the land. Surely Allah does not like the mischief maker. So very comprehensive nasihat being given to Qarun from those whom Allah had given success. You know, they came and gave a very comprehensive nasihat to him and advice to him that if Allah has made rich, use these wealth to earn the abode of the hereafter. Spend money as to please Allah. In a way, convert your wealth into the good deeds, into neki. Now, being rich is not in any way against Islam. Being righteous doesn't mean that one has to be a poor and a destitute. There were many prophets, there were many messengers like Hazrat Sulaiman, Hazrat Dawood alayhi salam, who were rich and who were also very powerful. Islam view is neither having nor not having wealth as an indicator of elevation or a low position. That's the Islamic view. It doesn't really, this is not the criteria at all, having wealth or not having wealth. That's not a criteria of somebody being elevated or someone being low. In fact, righteous people must try and be very successful in this world. They must try and be as wealthy as they possibly can while staying being righteous, so that they can use their wealth and their power for a good cause. Important is not what we have or what we have been. Importance is what we do with it. That's the important part, and how we use it. He said, "This is given to me because of the knowledge I have. Did he not know that Allah has destroyed from generations before him those who were stronger than him in power and greater than him in following? And the sinners have not to be asked about their sins." Now, what Qarun is saying over here is, look, what I have is because of my knowledge. I deserved it. I worked for it. Now, sometimes people don't want to be reminded that all that they have been given is due to the blessings of Allah. This is the ni'mat of Allah. They believe that what they got is due to their own abilities. It's their hard work. Now, to link and associate success and achievement with Allah, when we say and people who are successful and rich and powerful, and they link it with Allah, what it does, it breaks the kabur, it breaks pride in people. And relating it to one's own self, actually that it only brings pride and arrogance. My hard work, my anticipation, my planning, my execution, this actually brings in arrogance and pride in people. Then he came out before his people in his pomp, said, "Those who were desirous of the worldly life, would that we had the like of Qarun has been given. He is a man of great fortune indeed." So you can imagine Qarun coming out in Egypt and in Memphis and walking in the street, and how impressed people would be, how awed people would be seeing this pomp and grandeur, the motorcades and the sirens and the guards and the hatobacho and all these things. And majority of people would have wished and envied, "I wish I had all the good things which Qarun has, which he has." Not for a moment feeling pity that here is a man who's not really guided, who's not righteous. He doesn't say his salat, he has no taluk with this deen, not feeling any pity for him. Now, those people who had the correct ilm, they were not overwhelmed. They don't get overwhelmed or over-impressed even when they see the treasures of Qarun. Anyone who has firm belief in the treasures of the paradise, of the treasures of the Jannah, know that the treasures of this world are nothing. They are nothing. This is just temporary wealth and it's completely insignificant. And said those who were given knowledge, woe to you. Allah's reward is much better for him who believes and acts righteously. This is the great reward from Allah, not the worldly treasure. Someone who believes and acts righteously. But this is given to none but to those who are patient. Who are those people who are patient? Patience on obedience, patience on temptation, patience on difficulties. These are the people who are given these great rewards. Then we made him and his home sink into the earth. So there was no group for him who could help him against Allah, nor was he of those who could defend themselves. So such was the end of all this pomp and glory of Qarun with all its fineries and power and might and knowledge. Nothing could save him. When Allah wanted, his home sank, and he sank with all his treasures, and no one was able to help him out. And those who yearned to be in his position the day before started saying, "Oh, it seems that Allah extends provision to whom he wills and restricts it. If Allah had not been gracious to us, he would have made us sink. Oh, it seems that the infidels do not succeed." So now people realize, I don't want to be in the shoes of Qarun. I think what is important for us to learn from here is more or little is not important, but whatever is there must be afiyat in it, there must be safety in it, there must be blessings in it, that the good comes out of the wealth that Allah has given. So these people were saying, thank God we were saved. So this bubble has now burst and all is gone, and they say, thank God I didn't invest into that stock of a company which has now gone bankrupt like Enron, right? It's not that they were rejoicing. I mean, they didn't rejoice. Instead, they were happy that Allah saved them from this predicament, from this trial, from this great tribulation. No one said, no, good riddance of Qarun, good that he sank into the earth. But what they said was, thank God we didn't really have the same kind of attitude as Qarun had. As for the abode of the hereafter, we assign it to those who do not seek to exalt themselves on the earth, nor to make mischief, and the end is for the God-fearing. Now, important to note is that when people display their wealth, it creates real disharmony in the society. It creates unhappiness. It leads to jealousy. It leads to great facade in a society. Economic differences between people have been there. They will always remain. But when display and flaunting becomes the norm of a society, that is the reason why, that is a criteria for giving izzat to people, then it creates a lot of facade in a society. Whoever brings good deeds shall have better than it, and whoever brings evil deed, then those who commit evil shall not be punished except for what they used to do. So this is the great rahmat and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He increases the reward of the good deeds that we have done, and He increases them many times, and then the evil deeds that have been done by people is paid back in relation to the deed itself. Surely the one who has enjoined the Quran upon you will bring you back to the place of return. Say, my Lord knows best, the one who brings guidance and who is in manifest error. Now, this is a kind of a good news, of future being given to our Prophet ﷺ by Allah, that our Prophet will return back to the city that he loved. He knew that he will be migrating from here soon, but that he will be coming back to this city. You were not expecting that the book would be sent down to you, but it was a mercy from your Lord. So never be a supporter for the disbelievers. So this is an address to our Prophet ﷺ. He wasn't expecting to be bestowed the honor of prophethood or that a book be sent down to him, but this was a mercy of Allah that he was specially chosen. So Allah is advising him, never support the disbeliever, never help those people who are unjust. And let them not prevent you from Allah's verses after they are sent down to you, and call people to your Lord, and do not be among the polytheists. Because this ayat actually referring to this mushriks who were using all these tactics to force our Prophet ﷺ to taint the message of Quran. So in a way, the answer is being given to them over here. And do not invoke any other God along with Allah. There is no God but He. Everything is going to perish except His face. He alone has the right to judge, and to Him you are all to be returned. So this is the last ayat from Surah Al-Qasas, and this all talks about the that how all the creation of Allah, they are insignificant, they are there for there's nothing infinite over here, everything is finite, everything is insignificant as compared to the Creator. So all we need to do is work for His pleasure, the pleasure of Allah, and alone for His pleasure, and fear Him and Him alone. So we're going to start with Surah Ankabut and do up to ayat number 44. Ankabut means the spider. It's a Makkan surah, 5th or 6th year of Nabuwat. At this point in time, there were some new converts, and these new converts were being persecuted by the Makkans. So they came to our Prophet ﷺ and asked him to pray for them. And they were also visibly upset. And, they said, when will this end? They asked our Prophet ﷺ, please pray that this persecution on us ends. Our Prophet ﷺ was sitting around the Kaaba, and he was clearly annoyed by this. And he said, I swear by Allah, you are being hasty, that you are just wanting this, this thing to end too quickly. So this is how this surah begins. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Alif Lam Mim. So this is how Surah Ankabut begins, with 3 huruf muqatta'at. This is how Surah Baqarah also begins. So there are 26 surahs, 14 alphabets or 14 letters that are there in various muqatta'at. أَحَسِبَ النَّاسُ أَن يُتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. Do people think, or do people reckon that they will be left only on their saying that we believe and they will not be tested? Now this is a different style, right? We've observed this. This is not like a direct address to the Muslim. It's not saying, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu, ya ayyuhan nas, O people, or O you who believe. That's the very direct style that Quran normally uses. But it's almost like someone who is saying this, someone who turns his face away and then addresses. And what is the message being given over here? First, prove your faith with your deeds. Reciting kalma is just declaring the intentions. It's like I declare intention, I want to become a doctor, I want to do medicine. That's my intention, but that's not enough. It doesn't mean that I will do medicine. It doesn't mean I will become a doctor. Now comes, after declaring intention, now comes the real challenge to work towards the objective. And that's being said, that's exactly what's being said over here. That Allah will certainly test people out to see how strong their iman is, how strong their faith is. Those who are steadfast and those who are patient, these are the ones who are going to be successful. And certainly we have tested those who were before them. So Allah will surely know the one who are truthful, and He will surely know the liars. So this is a polarization taking place over here. Only when people are tested will it be determined who is really a real believer in what he is saying. Allah knows, but He will make it clear, He will make it evident for everyone, even for the person himself. Since people who break commandments to prevent any worldly loss, any social loss, what are they really proving by that? What they are really proving is that their belief is restricted just to plain words. Or do those who commit evil think that they will outstrip us? Evil is their judgment. Now the address is shifting. It's now shifting towards those people who were subjecting Muslims to test. So this is like an address to Abu Jahl and Abu Lahabs of that time. That, do you think you will escape the punishment of Allah? Now, if we see kufr rising around us, if we see kufr rising in this world, we don't have to feel disillusioned. We don't have to feel, disappointed. Because ultimately we should know that every kufr, every kafir is going to suffer in the hellfire. There's an ayah which is, in a way it's a very soothing ayah. وَكَفَى بِجَهَنَّمَ سَعِيرًا. Hell is sufficient as a place for burning, right? So anytime people are unjust, when you think of this ayat, you know that ultimately these people will meet their fate. So have no doubt that no zalim is going to go scot-free. No zalim is going to save himself from this fight. It's really, literally impossible. Whoever hopes to meet Allah, the terms appointed by Allah will most surely come, and He is the all-hearing, the all-knowing. So this ayat gives sabr to people, that these difficulties are going to ease out. You will ultimately meet Allah. And if we know that our end is going to be good, then this is going to be, this actually provides a relief for us. Even if we are going through difficulty, it's like a lot easier to work hard in very adverse condition if we know that in the evening we're going to return back to our comfortable home and we're going to sit down and it's going to be nice and cool and we'll have a good strong cup of coffee. It's much easier to work hard, right? So if we have strong faith, if we have a firm faith that ultimately I'm going to meet Allah and that I'm going to get reward for whatever difficulties I'm going through now, it has a very calming effect. It has a very calming effect on anyone. Whoever strives for his own benefit. Surely Allah is independent of all the world. So this is addressed to Muslim, that if you are bearing difficulty, it is for your own selves. Our patience and our obedience is not benefiting Allah. Allah is not dependent on people for his power and his izzat. Pharaoh was powerful because people made him powerful. Without them, he was nothing. But Allah is Ghani. He's free of all want. So whatever we are doing, whatever striving we are doing, whatever struggle that we are doing, this is for our own benefit. Allah is not benefiting out of this. Those who believe and do righteous deeds, we will most certainly expiate their bad deeds and will most certainly reward them according to the best of what they did. So why would Allah actually expiate their bad deeds? Why would He do that? Because what is done, right? We can't turn back the clock. If we have sinned, we have sinned. And this is the forward-looking nature of Islam. Think about future. This should be a good incentive for you to correct. So Quran says, fine, those who believe and do right, we will certainly expiate their bad deeds from them. Whatever they have done in the past, fine. It will be, as long as they ask Allah for forgiveness and not repeat, it's going to be washed clean. Think about the future, and this should be an incentive for us to correct and do good deeds. وَوَصَّيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ بِوَالِدَيْهِ حُسْنًا وَإِنْ جَاهَدَاكَ لِتُشْرِكَ بِي مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٍ فَلَا تُطِيعْهُمَا. We have instructed man to do good to his parents. The word that used over walidain husna, do the best, the most beautiful to his parents. But if they contend with you that you should ascribe partner with me, then do not obey them. To me is your return, then I shall tell you what you used to do. So first and foremost is there's a lot of emphasis in Quran to do itaat of your parents. There's no doubt about that do the best with them, have the best deeds for them. But the problem arises is when parents start to play God. When they want children to obey them, even if it tantamounts to disobedience of Allah. So Quran is drawing a line in the sand. Don't cross this line. So here a rule is being provided and a line is being drawn. When there is a clash between order of parents and the order of Allah, then Allah has to be obeyed. But that doesn't mean that children become insolent and disrespectful to their parents. That's not, they still need to have a good attitude towards them. And those who believe and do righteous deeds, we shall include them among the righteous. So when amal changes, then the company and priorities also changes. Among men, there are those who say we believe in Allah, but when they are persecuted in the way of Allah, they take the persecution of men as equal to the punishment of Allah. And if help comes from your Lord, they will certainly say, we were with you. Is it not that Allah knows well what lies in the hearts of the people of all the worlds? Now, when man, changes his way of life, his path, his thinking, he comes close to the guidance, to the Sirat-e-Mustaqim, then the company that he's keeping, that company also witnesses his transformation. His friends, his families, those around him, his colleagues, they witness this transformation. And sometimes they don't want to make the change. And as a result, they would make this person feel inferior and stupid. And they sometimes make fun and ridicule, they ridicule such people. A lot of time I've heard this from women and from men also, when they start to keep beard, as I started, it's also becomes a source of a lot of fun and ridicule. Now, sometimes these are tough times. Someone who can overcome this, rest will be simple and easy for them to bear these taunts and sarcasm and sarcasm and catcalls. Sometimes it's painful and people do get a bit shaken up. Now, as parents, this is our responsibility that we do not make our children people conscious or self-conscious. Log kya kahenge? That's something that we really shouldn't teach our children. When children see that by following Islam they lose their popularity, they sometimes they just bend under the peer pressure, and that's sometimes we need to be very careful, make them confident that they shouldn't do that. Allah will certainly knows those who believe, and He will certainly knows the hypocrites. Such are the munafiqeens, that they are always ready to compromise. And those people who are always willing to compromise, to be very honest, they will never achieve anything in life. They can never become real leaders. We need to observe our behavior before and after a trial and tribulation. And are we more worldly, or are we constantly complaining? Do we have grudge with Allah or not? Those who disbelieve say to those who believe, follow our way, and we will bear the burden of your sins. And they are not able to bear the burden of their sins in the least, more surely they are liars. So today we sometimes hear people, they say to their friends, don't do this or do this, don't do this work of deen, don't follow this deen, don't worry, we will answer for you. Well, to be sure, they will not answer for you. Every one of us is responsible for our own answer. So be sure that each one of us has a personal responsibility, and no one is going to really answer for us. They shall certainly bear their own burden, and some other loads along with their own burden, and they will certainly be questioned on the day of judgment about what they used to forge. So those who accept such false commandments, the instructions, their burden will not be reduced, but those who have led astray, their burden is going to increase. We sent Nuh to his people, so he stayed with them for 1,000 less 50 years. Then the flood engulfed them, and they were unjust. So we saved him and the people of the ark, and made it a sign for all the worlds. And Ibrahim, he said to his people, worship Allah and fear Him. That is better for you if you know. You only worship idols besides Allah, and you invent a lie. In fact, those whom you worship besides Allah do not have the power to give you provision. So seek provision with Allah and worship Him, and be grateful to Him, and to Him you are to be returned. Now this is a complete argument against idol worship that was given by Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam. Allah is He who created you, who provided you with all sustenance, and to whom you will be returned, and to whom you will give accountability. Now, can any deity be given credit to our birth, for our sustenance, for our return, for our accountability? No one will say that. No, not even a die-hard idol worshipper would ever say that it is this deity who is giving me provision, who gave me birth, gave me life, and to Him I shall return back. And if you reject, then many nations have rejected before you. The messengers have no more obligation than to convey the message clearly. So this denial of Allah is not new. This is age-old. So it's not just that the modern man has denied Allah. All misguided people throughout history have used the same logic, the same mentality. Today only the terms may have changed, but the denial remains the same. Did they not see how Allah originates the creation, then He repeats it? Surely this is easy for Allah. So science has reached to this conclusion that life did not come into existence on its own. That's what science has reached. It says life couldn't have come into existence on it. But what it rejects is, and the reason why it rejects is because it lacks the mean, is that is there a life after death? And that's what Quran is telling us, yes, that Allah He's the originator of all the creation, and then He repeats it, and this creation will come into existence again. Say, go about in the land and look how He has originated the creation, then Allah will create the subsequent creation. Surely Allah has power over all things. So anyone who has witnessed the signs of nature, the constant death and the constant birth, will reach to this conclusion that Allah is capable of recreating. In fact, no life after death is kind of an illogical concept, right? Because we see that there is justice in every law that is there in this universe. So should there be no justice for the moral laws? So by sheer logic, one will reach to the conclusion that there has to be a day of judgment, a day of resurrection. He punishes whom He wills, and His mercy on whom He wills, and to Him you are to return back. So this is Allah's prerogative. If He wants, He can punish people. If He wants, He can forgive people. So therefore we need to try make Allah razi. We need to seek His good pleasure. That's what we really want to do, that we want to have the good pleasure of Allah. And you will not be able to frustrate neither in the earth nor in the sky. And apart from Allah, you have neither a protector nor a helper. So in life, when people see someone rebelling, they support the one who is rebelling, because there is always a hope that this rebellion may be successful and I will benefit from it. But those who rebel against Allah, well, then there is no chance of success over there. So why should we attach with those who are rebelling? Why should we attach ourselves with the losers, which is doomed to fail? This rebellion is doomed to fail. The sensible thing would be to advise and counsel the rebel and to reform them and ask them to seek Allah's forgiveness. And those who deny the signs of Allah and the meeting of Him, those will despair of my mercy, and those are the ones for whom there is a painful punishment. So Quran is a rahmat of Allah, it's not a zahmat of Allah, it's not a nuisance. Following it will benefit people in the hereafter, and also following it will benefit people in this world. This is the only way in which people can lead a happy and a content life, a life which is free from depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts, which are highest among those people who actually do not believe in God. So the response of his people was none but that they said, kill him or burn him. So Allah saved him from the fire. Surely in this there is a sign for a people who believe. So Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam invited people towards peace, towards success. And people were so disoriented and they were so confused, these people, that their response was, kill him and burn him. And he said, have you adopted idols instead of Allah by way of love between you and the worldly life? Then on the day of judgment you will reject each other and will curse each other, and your abode is fire, and you will have no helper. So Lut believed in him, and he said, I am going to migrate for the sake of my Lord. Surely He is mighty, the wise. So among very few people who accepted the message of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam was his nephew Hazrat Lut alayhi salam. When Allah commanded them, they left the only civilized city of that time, Ur, in Babylonia, to the wilderness of Canaan in Palestine. And we granted him Ishaq and Yaqub and assigned prophethood and book to his progeny, and gave him his reward in the world. And of course, in the hereafter, he will be one of the righteous. So all prophets from the progeny of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam spread in different lands, and as a reward Allah bestowed prophethood and gave books and guidance to the progeny of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam. And Lut, when he said to his people, indeed you have committed a shameful act that no one in this world has ever preceded you in it. So Hazrat Lut alayhi salam was sent to the transgressing nation of Sodom and Gomorrah around the Dead Sea, which is the present Dead Sea, which used to be actually a sweet water lake, and it was a very fertile land. But then the azab of Allah came over here, and since then it has been a barren land. Is it not a fact that you approach men and rob the wayfarer and commit evil in your gatherings? So the answer of the people was none, but that they said, bring us Allah's punishment if you are truthful. Now what it seems is that they would commit evil in their gathering. Seems that their vulgar sins were done openly. There was no shame. As long as now one of the things I think we have to realize over here, as long as people hide the sin and cover it and keep it under a cover, it means that they have a recognition that this is a sin. There is a guilt and there is a shame. They have sinned, but they keep it under a cover. Now, sometime today, when you are arguing with people, they say, well, West, at least West is not hypocrite. They say openly what they do. That's what people claim. They say openly what they do, and whatever they're doing, they're telling you openly. They're not hiding it. While this thing is also being done in Muslim countries, but people hide it. The reason is not hypocrisy. The reason is that these things are no longer regarded sin in the Western culture, in the Western societies. He said, my Lord, help me against the people who make mischief. And when our messengers came to Ibrahim with the good news, they said, we are going to destroy the people of this town. He said, there is Lut in it. They said, we know very well who is in it. We will certainly save him and his family, except his wife, who will be among those who remain behind. Now, in matters of neki, in matters of sin, everyone is on his own and will not be rewarded and punished based on the relationship that they have. They will be punished and rewarded based on their past, on the deeds that they have done. Relationship with righteous people will not bring them any gain or bring them any relief. And when our messengers came to Lut, he grieved for them, and his heart was constrained because of them. And they said, "Do not fear nor grieve. We are going to save you and your family, except your wife, who will be among those who remain behind." So these angel messengers who came to Hazrat Lut alayhi salam, they appeared in form of good-looking boys, and Hazrat Lut alayhi salam realized that he doesn't have the power to offer them protection and safety to his guests, and that's the fear that he must have expressed or must be visible upon him. And these messengers said, "Do not fear, do not grieve, we are going to save you, don't worry about us. We are going to bring on the people of this town a punishment from the sky because they transgressed." Now when sins cross a certain limit, and after knowing the truth people reject the messenger or his teaching, then they become worthy of the azab of Allah. And we left from it an evident sign for a people who understand. So now the city have been discovered. These cities of Sodom and Amorah are there. You can actually go and visit them and witness the destruction. Why were they destroyed? They were destroyed because of the sin of homosexuality. And that is punishment, with such a severe punishment that the entire city was turned upside down. And to Madian, their brother Shuaib, so he said, "O my people, worship Allah and fear the last day, and do not roam about in the land as a mischief maker." Sin of people of Madian, to whom Hazrat Shuaib alayhi salam was sent as a messenger, was that they used to short way in measure. They used to do fraud. They would deceive people. They would cheat people. So they rejected him, and then they were seized by an earthquake, and they remained in their homes lying on their faces. Now those people who do not bow down to the commandments of Allah, when the messengers bring the clear message to them, then they are forced to bow down to the azab of Allah. This is a kind of a forced surrender. And Ad and Samud, and it appears clearly to you from their dwelling. And Shaitan had made beautiful for them their deeds, so he prevented them from the right way, even though they were a people of insight. So Ad and Samud were ancient civilizations. They existed even prior to Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam in Yemen and in Central Arabia. And we destroyed Qarun and Pharaoh and Haman. Indeed, Moses came to them with clear signs, so they acted arrogantly on the earth and were not able to escape. So Pharaoh, obviously, and Qarun, they are the icons of pride, and they are the icons of arrogance, as stated in the Quran. Thus we seized each one of them for his sin. So some of them we sent down a storm of stones, and some of them were seized by a mighty blast, and some of them we made to sink in the earth, and some of them we drowned. And Allah was not to do injustice to them, but they used to do injustice to their own selves. So when people are unjust, people are zalim, people commit all these transgressions, then this is like a waste. They are garbage. Such people this is just garbage. And so this is a disposal of waste that takes place. It's like when our trash can is full of waste and garbage, what do we do with it? We just remove it, right? We throw all this garbage away. So what was Pharaoh in the eyes of Allah? Well, Pharaoh was nothing but trash in the eyes of Allah. And as a result, this trash must be removed from this earth so that there is no epidemic. So this is there to protect from the plague, because these sins are very contagious. And the example of those who have adopted patrons other than Allah is like the spider that has made a house, while indeed the weakest of the house is the house of a spider, if they only know. Now Quran, this is ayat 41 is also Ankabut, which is where this whole surah also takes a name from. Shirk is like the web of a spider. Now the interesting thing is that the spider is able to make his web and keep increasing the web as long as as the spider is catching its victims. If the victims are not caught, because these victims, when they are caught, it's their protein which actually then turns into this the thread through which the spider is making this web over there. So if there are no victims, if there are no victims, then the spider will not be able to spin the web. And the web exists, why? Because people indulge in shirk. If today people stop indulging in shirk, all this Abdullah Shah Ghazi and all this shirk that takes place around us, this is going to go away, because this is dependent on people coming in and getting in this web of the spider. Surely Allah knows whatever things they invoke besides Allah, and He is the mighty, the wise. We cite these examples for people, but no one will understand them except the knowledgeable one. So we'll do the last ayat for this evening. خَلَقَ اللَّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ بِالْحَقِّ إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتًا لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And surely Allah has created the heavens and the earth with truth. Surely in this there is a sign for the believers. So the laws which govern everything in this universe, this last ayat telling us, there's so much commonality, right? At the micro level and at the macro level. The same basic principle, whether it's an electron revolving around the nucleus or it's a complete solar system, they all have the same laws. They are revolving around a planet, and that's what we witness in close to us and also in this universe. The signature is the same. The work is of one creator. The laws are across the universe the same. So alim is one. The definition of alim in Islam is the one who sees these numerous signs, and it helps him recognize the creator and helps him coming close to him. So barakallahu lana wa lakum bil Quran al-Azim wa nafana wa iyyakum bil ayati wa zikr al-hakim.